if you think of the root of the root of the root of whatever the pain is, you have to go there. But the nice thing is, as going there and having the courage to meet it with full on, like just total authentic connection to that pain, it's in that connection to the pain is when you can really let it go.
This is the Own It Show, where we tell stories of how everyday people made ownership theirs.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Own It Show. I'm your host, Justin Rothling-Schofer. And if you guys are new here, you got 278 episodes that you guys can go back and check into and take a look at. The guests are ranging from anything from health, wellness, entrepreneurship, business, but ultimately, what's the common thread that links us all is that we've all had this ownership moment. We've all had this idea of what does it look like pre-ownership and what does it look like post-ownership? And when we lean into a life of ownership, what does that allow us? What kind of freedom does that allow us? What kind of new feeling and freedom does it allow us to truly tap into, to realize the potential that's already been prepared for us? And a lot of it comes back to preparing ourselves, preparing our mind, preparing our bodies, preparing our hearts, preparing our spirits to do what it is that we were meant to do. And so I could not be more excited to bring on today's guest, who really been kind of, again, just a roundabout way in which we were connected. But she founded the Flow State Institute and really focused on helping people transform their lives and stay in that flow state. And we've talked about flow before, really talking about Stephen Coulter's work when it talked about flow state and what that was all about and how do we get into that and what's the purpose and premise behind it and why is it so important for the entrepreneur and the business owner to be able to get into those more parasympathetic states and use it in a more purposeful way. And so, Dash, I couldn't be more excited to welcome you to the show and to really have you pour your experiences and your just your heart into our audience today.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here, Justin. I'm so inspired about everything that you're up to. And I love that you're bringing this medicine to so many different groups and audiences, ranging from the athletes to the couples to the corporations and everything. That's just exactly what needs to happen. And I love to see that you're owning it and taking that initiative.
Totally. Yeah, I love the use of words because it's so unique in how everything kind of comes together, right? Is we live in this world where we're just taught there's one way to do things and we have to be busy and we have to go and we have to push and we have to get to the brink and we have to push boundaries in every single way. But yet we sometimes forget that we have to go inwards. And when we heal inwards or we're solid inside, we're ultimately able to realize something so much deeper and something so much more fulfilling on the outside.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love that you also were speaking a little bit about the flow state. So you guys have talked about that before in different episodes. And I feel like in every sector, it can be beneficial for people to understand the power of just tapping into flow in every area of life. Health and happiness is really, based on your energy. And so we have the power to shift our energy. And that's what I dedicated most of my adult life to, because I was like, man, like if you don't feel, flow, then you need to get in flow first. That's got to be the priority before moving forward with anything, basically, in my mind.
Totally. We often come back to the concept of time versus energy. And so many people are seeking, like, how can I manage my time better? How can I figure out how to operate more effectively? But yet, if we just manage energy, if we understand how we're operating from an energetic standpoint and be able to pour back into ourselves and get that right first, time really becomes obsolete because we're able to find something that's renewable rather than something that seconds pass. We'll never get these 60 minutes that we're together here back, but rather what kind of energy exchange, what kind of space am I going to be in immediately after? And how did I prepare for it immediately prior so that we can get the most out of what it is that we're truly doing in the present moment?
Absolutely. I was just thinking about that today when it comes to like your diet and nutrition. It's funny because this woman actually contacted me from I think it's called the something of life. Anyway, it's a foundation where they donate bone marrow, right, for people that have this very rare leukemia. And I guess I had swabbed my mouth in Israel 2008. So 15 years ago, I did this swab, and they just identified me as a perfect match for a woman who needs bone marrow transplant, and asked me if I would donate my bone marrow. And I thought, okay, so I had this long conversation about the woman, and she basically said that the reason that they do this transplant or this bone marrow is because what you're doing is you're giving them your immune system. And I never understood that that's what they were actually doing. Like, they're taking the healthy immune system from the donor, which would be me, and they're giving it to this person who's just gone through chemo. And it actually, they can, in that situation, they like take on your immune system. And she said, to such an extent that they even start craving the foods that you love. And I was like, what a blessing, because I'm like the healthiest eater. And I was thinking about how important it is, just even the very fundamental, like our platelets, our blood, like everything inside of us is like either thriving or not, right? And so to be able to have a really healthy immune system is like the foundation of our wellness. And what an interesting thing this morning to have that conversation and to realize that I get to gift my immune system to this woman. And what a gift.
So are you leaning in? Are you going to go and do that?
I'm going to do it. Well, they said I have to go through a whole thing, like, to make sure that I qualify and everything. But I'm a perfect match. But then they have all these other tests and everything. But I was like excited because I was like, she's like, did you have the vaccine? I never got COVID. I didn't get the vaccine, nothing. My immune is so good. And I was like, I'm so excited to give her my immune system.
Awesome. I love
like
it.
Celebrating for this excitement.
Oh, that's going to be just a blessing to her. And think about that. And this is like, it's so cool to think about this, because think about everything that had to go right in order for that moment to happen. You had to be in Israel at this time in 2008. You had to just choose randomly to go and get this swab done. And ultimately, you were being prepared over the last 14, 15 years for this moment that came up this morning to now give this woman a blessing. And ultimately, you became her miracle. Like, how?
Yeah, to save her life. Yeah, I was so excited. And I was thinking about how I dedicate my life to health and wellness. And like literally everything I do is about boosting my immune system. When I say my immune system, it's really like, the strength of the energy that you carry. That's your immune system, right? If your energy is strong, your cells are strong, then they can fight off, the bad guys, whatever you want to call that. But basically, like I do a lot of fasting. I do all these like biohacking protocols. I do breath work every day, yoga every day, like 20 years, and like a lot of cleansing. Like I did so many these deep, kinds of cleansing that people wouldn't even like think is like possible. Like I did like, I'll give you an example. One summer I did 2 months liquid cleansing, and I did 22 colon hydrotherapy sessions and 14 liver flushes in 2 months. And I felt at the end of that I was actually like a whole nother person. And I was just like, just imagining the upgrades, of the cellular just genetics and the DNA and all of the things that you release when you cleanse and you clear out on those levels. And I was thinking about what a blessing this woman is getting this immune system. It worked really hard for it.
Yeah, it's incredible. I know exactly what you're talking about, because once you start to make decisions based off what your body's communicating to you, and once you start to empower yourself with the information in order to direct your paths, it's amazing to see how the body actually, A, can heal itself, B, can operate at a level that you didn't even know was possible or that existed. And 3, it actually opens your eyes up to this myth. I call it the myth of normal, where we all think we're feeling normal, but yet it's just what the world's told us, is that, that exhaustion that you feel, or those constant colds that you get, or the inability to sleep, or the irritability, or the anxiety, or the brain fog, or the frustration that you feel on a day-to-day basis, that's not what it takes to be an entrepreneur. That's not what it takes to be a mom or a dad. That's not what it takes to just live in this world. No, it's not. It is truly the myth that the world has told us, is that's the cost of just being able to operate.
Absolutely. I was thinking about it too, like the importance of keeping yourself clear in that sense of in flow, because that's where the best ideas come through. I was like just looking back over my life recently and like the different types of opportunities that I had. Like, for example, even in business, where just something would come to me, and it would be like, for example, I helped this app. It was like already the largest yoga app in the world. They came to me. They had 30 million subscribers, and I helped them basically 10x their revenue and double their subscriber base. So in just a few years, with my ideas that I gave them, they got 60 million subscribers, and then they were like 10x their revenue, and they've just like had such an exponential growth from my contribution and my consulting with them. But I was thinking about how like that just came to me. It's like I didn't even know about them. They like emailed me one day out of the blue, but then like all of a sudden all these ideas downloaded, like how I could serve them, or just make a better impact. Like to me, it was always just like the idea that, like, okay, how do you reach more people, or like whatever. So my mind starts connecting these dots, like, but I feel like that's part of the flow state. It's literally like you're connected to this cosmic intelligence, or you could call it I call it the infinite intelligence of God. You're just connected to the mind of God. And then like whatever information could be useful in that moment to whoever's relevant can flow through so easily. And so I just cherish this knowing. And I feel it's so important for everybody to know about that.
Totally. I mean, just you talk about that infinite intelligence, and that's what I speak to, is like God or Jesus, and that like connection that I have spiritually. Just to know that like that lives inside each and every one of you. Like that's what we were created from. That's what we have access to that. It's just a matter of whether we choose to tap into it, whether we choose to lean in, whether we choose to connect and have this deep level of oneness that quite often we're so busy that we leave it on the outside and push through our own abilities rather than leaning into that amazing infinite intelligence that's available to us.
Exactly. That's such a good point. Because I think about that so many times. Like, I think so often we try to do things on our own, but that's such an inefficient way, because there's like this infinite, powerful intelligence available, so it's like we try to do it on our own, like as we like separate from that, like separate from God, or however you want to think about it, that it's actually like the hard way. It's kind of like trying to hike up a mountain on your hands, instead of instead of taking like a horse that's going to take you easily to the top. I don't know. It's just like such an interesting thing when I realized like to surrender and just allow God to work through me, and that I'm just like a vessel.
That's it. That's exactly it. I always call it your earthly vessel. That's what it is. And it's a vehicle. It's a vehicle to do more or do less. And it's truly determining how well you prepare this earthly vessel, mind, body, heart, spirit, as to whether or not you're going to actually realize all the promises, all the giftings, all the bestowment and abundance that's available to us. Because when we were put on this earth, we each were given a calling, something we were meant to be world class at, and truly to change the scope of the world. Let's take the example of you, where you didn't realize in 2008 that you were going to give somebody a gift of bone marrow that, quite frankly, is going to save her life. You didn't know that, but that was prepared for you for a long period of time. Why all of a sudden, over the last 15 years, have you leaned into all of these modalities, all of this true love and passion for health and wellness, that ultimately you're giving this woman, who obviously needs it in a dire way, some of the best bone marrow cells probably on earth in some way, shape, or form, that is literally her miracle, that is going to take her from her reality today to something else that she doesn't even know what's prepared for her yet. And why is her life going to be saved so that she can go and ultimately impact somebody else? Like, think about how that all works in that place. Like that to me is so freeing, knowing that nobody could have planned that. Nobody could have figured that out. Nobody could have orchestrated that other than God. And by being obedient to what you were being told, by being obedient to your calling, by surrendering, you're able to ultimately realize that on a exponential degree.
Yeah, I agree. It's so beautiful. I was also thinking about that because if you think about the divine plan, it's like there's always this conversation, is it free will or is it destiny and all this? And I think it's definitely both, but there is some sort of a divine plan for our lives. And it's funny because I think we always think we have our, like, what we think it should be, what life should be, how we should, like our will or whatever. And there is that element of choice, but I feel that there's definitely an unfolding divine plan. And every time that I've ever just asked, like been really seriously like in communion with the conversation of God, with God, to say like, what is your plan for me? Like, show me the highest and best way. Show me the path that you would have me in the best service to all, and like really sincere from the heart, asking for that type of guidance and then getting out of the way. So it's not like, oh, this is what I want to do, but it's more like, what would you have me do? Because I will, I'm happy to go any direction as long as you're on my team.
Totally. I'm like, first overall draft pick. Who's up? I got him.
Yeah. It's like kickball. I'll pick you.
Yeah.
You're on my team. We're gonna win.
But the craziest part is that everybody has the opportunity to take him as a first overall draft pick. It's like,
yeah, I know.
Everyone can take
on everybody's team, and it's no competition.
exactly.
A lot of people don't choose that for some reason. And I even had moments where I think maybe I didn't, and I saw how that floundered. Ultimately, that's how we get back on track.
That's a great point. Like, I want to kind of go down that road for a second. Have you ever found that yourself has started to take things on in like your own flesh and your own choices, and really kind of deviated from that level of obedience or that level of connectivity, that level of oneness? And when you have done that, what have you ultimately found that has occurred or happened for you?
Well, I'll say my biggest issue has never been my flesh, but I would say, like, if there was ever an over ambition of ego involved where I felt I'm going to do all this and it's me, and if it was ever, not if it was ever, but if it is ever about just me, that's always the detriment. So I think everybody's path is different, but for myself, whenever I've found that I'm making things about me, that's when I get the wake up call. And so it's a constant checking, what I call checking of the ego, where it's just like, all right, let me make sure, am I making it about me again? Because we have a tendency as the human nature does that. It's like, it's all of a sudden back to being about me, and like, whatever it is, it doesn't even matter. It could just be grocery store, but it's still, like looking at every action, every thought, every intention. Now, is it becoming about me again, or is it about the greater good? Is it about the other? Is it about the we? And really continuously moving into that space of we-ness, or we could call it like unity consciousness, or other-centered actions. And the more that I do that, I feel like I am coming closer to God, because I feel that God is always doing that. So God is never about me. God is always about the unity of everything. And so that's how I feel like can grow more into the likeness of God, or however you want to say that. Some people would say the obedience. I don't look at it as obedience, because I feel sometimes that feels like there's still a separation if we're trying to be obedient to something. Instead, I see it as like a becoming in the likeness.
It's great. It's such a great like analogy and word spot, because when you think about being like God or being like Christ, we're always trying to get back to that level of connectivity. And there's so many things in this world that pull us away, and ego being one of them. And John Gordon is one of my great mentors, and he talks often about how ego is actually part of the soul. And ego is something that can either drive us forward or create separation. Ego creates oneness, or ego creates separateness. And when you're able to be aware of what's driving the ego, what desire is, the desire from God, or is the desire from an earthly desire? And that's either going to determine whether we are oneness or separateness. And it will determine whether things flow or whether things seem to be stagnant and hard and like we're pushing a rock uphill. And so by continuing to latch on to that connectivity and finding things in your life that either push you closer towards that level of oneness or further away, it's really, really crucial. And as entrepreneurs or people who are constantly serving other people, it so often can become a wedge, and it can become about you rather than becoming about truly what you're trying to do in the mission, the vision, the purpose of why you're taking on this. And so I'd love to kind of get your take on what actions or what habits, behaviors, practices you put into place to help generate and create that level of oneness.
Yeah, I love that question. I feel like I've been on a lifetime of what I call like practices. Actually, I have a good friend, she calls them intermediaries, which I think is interesting because we had a long conversation about this recently. Because I've got to interview Sadhguru a few times and different types of enlightened masters, and this conversation, for example, with Sadhguru, and he said he meditates for 20 seconds in the morning, and that's his full practice. And I was thinking about how we kind of, and you were also saying this earlier about how it can feel overwhelming to feel like, oh, I need to do like meditation, journaling, yoga, breath work, and you have like such a long list of what you need to do in order to be in alignment, basically. And so I feel like I'm at a stage in my path where I want to encourage people that less is more, and really that. But for me, my practice, because I have a school and I teach, yoga and meditation and breath work, and through the Flow State Institute, I certify teachers and wellness coaches, and I've spent my whole life teaching these things. And I realized sometimes we can actually get lost in the modalities and feel like we need to be doing more in order to get into alignment. And I found like certain little hacks, I feel like, that can get you there quicker. So then like whenever I would do that, I would realize, well, I don't need to do any of those other things if I do this thing. And it started to give me this like new perspective, because I literally dedicated my whole life to teaching all of these things. And then I realized, well, that's all good and they're all beneficial and they all work. But what if you could get there faster and not need to do all those things, right? So I really was sitting with that. And then I was like, oh no, then I make myself obsolete. So that actually was a problem. But then I started going, okay, who cares? Like, get out of the way and just see how can we actually deliver the energy without needing to feel needed, or like that my lifetime of dedication to these modalities would become worthless now or something. None of it's worthless. They all are very beneficial, because I feel like the journey to get to where you can just do 20 seconds of meditation in the morning, for example, and get to that alignment or get to that oneness energy or the flow state, that there sometimes it does take 10 to 20 years, right, to be able to cultivate that level of prana that you could, in 20 seconds get yourself into that vibration and not need any other practices, because you're in the energy. Like, you don't need to do this and this for another 2 hours in order to feel that way. You can just feel that way. So I started to look at it like that. I was like, okay, well, I've been practicing over 20 years and teaching 18 years. And I said, okay, so for somebody who's been on the path a while, the answer is you honestly don't need to do much, just like a few moments of breath work, just a recentering and a prayer, like eating properly and hydrating yourself, like little things. But I think more than anything, it's always the breath. That's, if you're going to pick one thing, it's your breath. And the other thing I would say is like your nutrition, because if you're eating a lot of things that's blocking your gut, what happens is when you eat like whatever it is, whether it's you eat too much or you eat the unhealthy foods or whatever it is, your gut produces 90% of your happiness hormones and the hormones that help you to feel in flow. So if your gut is like not in a good place, you can't feel in flow no matter what practices you do. So if your gut is, that's why I spend so my lifetime cleansing, talking about doing the 2-month cleanser, just clearing out like parasites and heavy metals and all of the toxins and the imbalances in the microbiome of the gut. Because I noticed if my gut is in the good place, I don't need to do anything else. But if it's in a bad place, I could do hours of modalities or practices or intermediaries, however you want to consider that, meditation, breath work, all these things, and it still wouldn't put me in the right place. So it's like now the awareness is to tell people, I have to be very, very direct with this, is that your priority has to really be your gut, because that is the foundation, and they call it your second brain, or sometimes they call it your third brain because your heart could be one of the brains. But your gut brain is like the paramount importance, and it actually affects all your other brains, right? So then your heart, which is more 5,000 times more powerful than your mind, even according to the Heart Math Institute, they've measured the magnitude of the energy of the heart and how powerful it is for healing and for just everything, that your heart actually doesn't operate at its fullest capacity when your gut is also blocked. So the foundation is like the root, the very core of us has to be clear. And I think majority of people, it's not. And that's why we see so much, different things, depression, anxiety. A lot of that is actually like because of disturbance in the digestive system.
You're just like speaking my language, because it's really how we operate with all of our clients that we operate with. Is when they come through, we're doing cellular blood testing and gut biome paneling to understand, okay, what's happening at the cell? What are you deficient in? Where it's happening at the gut? Why is the core not there? And then teaching certain practices and around that. And I want to go to this level because I think we've prepared everybody for this, but understanding, and you said it and you touched on it, is breath is really what connects us. And if we were even to go biblically and scripturally, is even in Genesis, the very first chapter of the Bible, they talk about how we were just dust, right? We were brought together, compiled through bones. And it wasn't until God breathed the breath of life into us that we became something, that we became alive, that we became human. And our breath is truly the root foundation that what brings us back. And then obviously now taking the academic side is all of my research in heart rate variability and kind of being in that space. You start to see how the phrenic and vagus nerve have true deep innervations, and the biggest impact that is made on our heart rate variability is breath. And it's powerful. And we have, and like, what a gift to think back that we have access to this anytime we want. And so what happens so often is that we unconsciously breathe, but breath is what gives us life. And so breath needs to be done so consciously, even for 2 minutes a day, to be able to bring us back to this state of oneness, to this state of connectedness, this state of calm and peace that tap us into that infinite knowledge, that infinite connection that truly allows us to step into our greatness.
Absolutely, 100%. Actually, I've done so many breathworks, and actually just started a new one because I was with my, who Sri Ravi Shankar is?
I do.
Yeah, he's amazing. Actually, like, I knew of him for a long time, but I just got more and more deeply involved with his foundation and with his people. But they're a partner for my children. I have a foundation. It's called the Bright Future Foundation. And our initiative is called the Children of the Future. And our intention is to get this breath work into all of the schools in America, and to really get the children and the teachers practicing this conscious breathing. And I've practiced many forms of breathing. But it was so nice because the Art of Living Foundation from Sri Ravi Shankar, they have a whole thing called Sky Schools, and it's called Sudarshan Chakra Kriya, which is a very specific type of breath practice that I got the opportunity to learn. And it's so nice because it's been backed by science with research with Harvard and Stanford and Yale, and they've shown like so many numerous, just like infinite amounts of studies showing like how it helps with everything from blood pressure to the brain functioning to your heart, your everything like improves with consistent practice like this. But I think in some ways it's like any type of conscious breathing could produce these results. But this specific breath has had like the most research about it, and it's been really, really profound. They've brought it into over 10,000 schools already. But our goal is to get it into 100,000 schools, to get it into all the schools, all the teachers, all the families and the children, to be able to learn how to regulate their social, emotional skills, their mental health with their breath, just specifically. And that's something that they haven't been teaching as a requirement in schools, which I don't know why. They teach math, they teach all these things like that are good, but not like life-changing, and then they don't teach that. So it's our goal and our mission to get this breath into every school, and to get all the children and all the teachers practicing, and I started, so today's day 5. I'm going to do a 40-day every morning with this breath. It's not very long. I think it's about a 20-minute practice, but I started to really think about how wonderful that is if people can get into a regular morning or evening, whenever, like, routine of just a conscious breath practice. Because what it is, it's like mental emotional hygiene. It's kind of like you take a shower or you brush your teeth. This is like brushing your mind and your emotions from the inside, cleansing in that way, and how that can really change the whole world.
You're so right. And it's amazing how your breath can change the way you see the world. It can change the way that it can change your mood. It can change your behaviors. It can change your mind state. It can change your flow state. It can change your body's chemistry. It can change you right down to the cellular chemistry. And the healing that we've been able to see has just been unbelievable. I was telling you at the very beginning, we just got back from a 7-day retreat with our entrepreneurial couples that we lead out in. We were in Costa Rica, and we started every morning with some different breath work. We'd go through a workout or some yoga or hot cold immersion or whatever it may be, and just exposing people to different modalities that they could use, and realizing that everything is just a tool. And quite frankly, every tool works. It's just what works for you in the moment and the state that you're in. And what are you going to use, and what are you going to be consistent with, and what are you going to use for the season? Like, the bigger your toolbox, the more everything doesn't look like a nail. Because if you only have a hammer, everything's a nail, right? So as we were seeing this, we had people just, I still remember, I just like seeing their faces, just tears coming down their face, just sobbing. And coming out of it, just asking their experiences. We'd done a 20-minute, a 5-minute, a 40-minute, a 60-minute. And at the end, everyone was like, every single one of them felt like it was 30 to 60 seconds long. They just so deeply connected and so deeply rooted. And the healing from children passing away, to the healing of addiction, to the healing of brokenheartedness, to the healing of anger, to the healing of forgiveness, like amazing transformations and true realizations and engagements with Jesus and with people who have passed, and just understanding that you truly can transcend into a different dimension and get into your body and create such a deep level of oneness. And that power is available to us all the time. And it's a gift that we have, but we just so often don't lean into it.
Absolutely, 100%. I was thinking about when you were just saying the hot cold therapy, because I remember, I had a lot of trauma as a child. I didn't share my story, but actually when I was a little girl, my mother lost her mind when I was 7. She got schizophrenia from like combining cocaine and alcohol. And it was just like the chemistry of that is really not the formula for a healthy mind. So she lost her mind, and we ended up in foster care. And so anyway, I had like a long history of trauma, I'll say, like early childhood trauma. And so I dedicated the majority of my life to learning about how to heal trauma, my own trauma, other people's trauma. And I found, there was just a few things that are, I would say, the most effective. And I would say the breath work is one of the most effective, like any types of breath work. But there are certain types of breath work, holotropic breath work. And some of these other ones, the one I was describing a minute ago is really good because it's also more gentle. Like the holotropic can feel like, very intense and, you go deeply into a cathartic, which is important as well when they're ready. But for a child or something, it's better to have a little bit easing into it. But the breath work, I think, is really the most powerful in terms of releasing trauma from the cellular level, because that's what happens. Trauma stores itself on many levels, physically in the cells, but also in the subconscious and all of the different layers of the mind. And one other thing that we do in terms of trauma is that the mind has a very unique ability to replay a memory over and over. And then what happens is the body, like psychology, doesn't know the difference between that it happened 1,000 times or that it only happened once, but you relived it in your mind 1,000 times. Like in your body, you feel like it happened 1,000 times. The feeling is what gets imprinted. And so what happens is then you felt like you had that one trauma 1,000 times because of the replay mechanism of the mind. And so in the cells, it feels like you've been like literally repeatedly traumatized. And so what happens with the breath is that you go in and you go into the deepest layers of those little cellular memories of the DNA strands, and they start to release some of that trauma, some of that vibration. And it's really amazing because actually it was just not even that long, I would say. I mean, depends on how much trauma or how much you relived things, but that you can release things pretty quickly. But I think the combination with the cold therapy is also just tremendously effective. I remember one time I did 22 days of the Wim Hof, 22 days. And every day I started with 1 minute, and then I worked my way up every day, 1 more minute. So by the end of the thing, I was doing 22 minutes in the cold and then coming out and doing the breath work. And it was life-changing. Like literally before that, I was so averse to the cold. And then after that, I could walk around in a cold climate without even a jacket on. And I felt warm from the inside out. And I realized so often our fear and the trauma that we carry is what makes us feel cold a lot. Like people who are like, I can't handle the cold. I think that a big component of that is that we're storing this trauma, which is also in the same sort of family as fear. And the fear trauma energy is very averse to cold. And so the more that you work on that through the breath and also through cold therapy, for example, then it's interesting to see that you can actually change yourself from the inside out, and in this really visceral way, like that you can start to feel warmer from the inside out as like a baseline.
100%.
Did you experience that before?
Totally. Like that's, and I think even going off of what those 20 couples experienced this weekend is there were, I'd say probably 15 of them that had never done a cold immersion. And and I'll just give a story of one of them. He was a 47-year-old entrepreneur. Watches everybody go in, coach them through the breathing, getting into the cold, how to get in safely, how to kind of, again, coach themselves through it to continue to stay connected to the breath, heat from the inside out. And all of a sudden, 30, 45 seconds in, everything, like there's a sense of calm that comes over, and they were experiencing that for the first time. Well, he gets in and he can't connect to his breath. He's panicking a little bit and jumps out 31 seconds. Just, I can't do it. Just trying to force his way through it. Well, he came back the next day and we were kind of talking through some things. And that day one, we did a big, like deep relationship day that was led really kind of pulling up some things that he was going through and really exposed some difficult times that he was having in business. The guy has 7 businesses, all kind of, it's been traumatic for him for the last year and a half. And he gets in the second day and he's able to, he had these major releases that first day. He comes back day 2, gets in, connects to the breath, leans into it. All of a sudden at about 45 seconds, his eyes were open and then they became wide like saucers. And he goes, I feel warm. And he's like, I feel good. And he just stayed there and we had a conversation and we started talking and everybody else started talking around him. And he's like, this feels amazing. I haven't been able to find this space of calm forever. And he starts actually like tearing up. And I think he was in there for 4 minutes. And he's like, I'm just going to get out because I want to give somebody else a shot. But it was like, he just found this space of peace. And there's so many stories like that when you're utilizing these different modalities. You can talk about it by using a sauna or steam room as well. Heat does the exact same thing, where you have to find this new level of consciousness and this new level of connectivity. And you can actually, as you were talking about, reestablish the equilibrium and start to heal trauma from the cellular level outwards, heal from the inside out. And when we're able to do that, it truly makes something like sustainable long term. It's no longer this pharmaceutical or this worldly way of healing and just masking with a Band-Aid, but rather let's get to the cellular level, what we're all made up of, and truly heal from the inside out.
Absolutely. And my experience too is that, like, because in the yogic tradition, I have a yoga school, so like the yogic tradition is that we have this what they call the koshas. So these are the layers. So you have the physical layer, then you have the emotional body, then you have your mental, and you have your spiritual, and then the last one with the fifth kosha called Anandamaya kosha. So the Anandamaya kosha is Ananda is the word for bliss. So basically, the thing is that we actually are born as a baby. We are born connected to the bliss sheath, which is that bliss layer, which is actually the oneness with God energy. Like it's like this amazing energy. And then all these other layers, whether it's your physical health, your emotional, your mental, and then also even the spiritual connectivity. So they get like what we're talking about, these traumas, they get these imprints, they call it. So the imprint, in yogic tradition, they call it the samskara. So basically it's an imprint. You could think of it like a scar on your energy body that it stays with you and it blocks the flow, right? So like if you think about it, flow is you, pure source energy, connecting to your bliss layer of energy, right? But everything in between that is either clear energy, and so you have a good flow, or it's a block to that flow. So if you have an imprint in your psychology, your emotions, and so when we're talking about releasing it at the cellular level, that's the physical level. Now everything is connected. So the physical level, of course, as we clear that, then it actually helps clear the emotional level and these other levels. But it's interesting to think that because this happened to me and to many of my clients as well, like as you go in, for example, with the breath work, it goes to many levels, but I think the one that it directly most affects immediately is the emotional level. So that's why a lot of times you'll cry, you'll have a release, you'll have like a reliving of the pain that you went through is the doorway to healing it, right? So sometimes people say, I don't want to go there. Well, in order to really fully get to the core, like if you think of the root of the root of the root of whatever the pain is, you have to go there. But the nice thing is, as going there and having the courage to meet it with full on, like just total authentic connection to that pain, it's in that connection to the pain, is when you can really let it go. And it's the awareness of it. It's the awareness of realizing that there's nothing wrong with you. Like fundamentally, it's not that something's wrong with you as an individual or on a soul level. Like you at the soul is perfect, divine, connected to God and source and love. And that's like your essence. So all of these other stories or some scars, the imprints that we carry, we have to just be courageous to go. And through the different modalities, there's a number of ways, but to go and to be willing and open to see that and the truth of whatever it was. Like it could have been something very devastating. Maybe it was something simple that we made bigger than it was, but sometimes it was pretty bad usually. And that just to love that aspect of ourself, because the word healing actually literally translates to mean to make whole. And that's when we're talking about the oneness and the feeling of flow and all of that. Is the flow experience or the oneness of existence with God is truly just a feeling of wholeness, of knowing that there is nothing broken, there's nothing missing inside of you, and that in the deepest level of your being, you are just a divine, extension of source and God. But if there's any of these programs that are buried within subconscious or consciousness somewhere, to have the courage and be guided to where you can find your healing, and to be open to that and be willing to do whatever it takes to get to the core of that and to meet it full on with an open, forgiveness and love. And there's so much liberation in that. And I feel like as we guide people to that place, that's where people can become their best self. It's like so often we have these programs that are holding us back and we don't know why, but we just feel like we're not there or not fully, who we were meant to be. And really, as we let go of these programs, we confront them, we heal them, we forgive, we let go, and you expand into this greater version of self that can be of greater service to humanity, that can serve your purpose in the biggest way possible and love in the best ways. And so that's how we fulfill our divine purpose here in this world.
So beautifully said. I agree with you 100%. It's preparing ourselves for what's already been prepared for us, and just leaning in to make sure that we are that whole being, and that every aspect of us is enough. Every aspect of it is exactly where we were supposed to be. So it's beautiful. Dash, where can everybody find you and get more access?
Well, let's see. I am everywhere. So if you go online, my website, I think most people connect with me through Instagram. My name is Dashama, Dashama. And Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, everywhere you can find me, Twitter, even LinkedIn, my website, dashama.com. But what I'm really passionate about right now is about the Children of the Future initiative that we're doing. So if you have a heart for children, if you want to be involved in any way, we would love to work with you or hear from you. And you can find more information about that at childfuture.org. That's my website. And connect with me on Instagram. Come say hi.
I love it. So guys, as you go forward, I want you to realize that you have the power inside of you to heal. You have the power inside of you and all the tools necessary to find that new level of connectivity, that new level of freedom that you're feeling, whether it's anxiety, whether it's depression, whether it's just this issue sleeping, brain fog, not feeling right, not feeling like you're connected, feeling like there's this distance. You have the power to heal that. You have the power to bring that back. And it starts with your breath. It starts with truly connecting deeply by taking a moment. And it's not about checking the boxes. It's not about stacking things. It's not about doing your cold, your hot, your sauna, your breath work, your meditation, your journaling, your workouts. It's not about doing more. It's about doing less. It's about figuring out what is it that matters to you? What is it that connects to you? What is it that brings you into that state of clarity, connection, and oneness that allows you to realize your potential and what's living inside of you and why you were put on this earth. Because we are so connected and we are so wired, and there were so many things that are prepared for us, but it's just basically asking us to, hey, prepare yourself so you can ultimately realize what's been already prepared for you. So as you go forward, remember that success is different, own your different, and we'll see you guys next week.